pulling up the notes. Here we go. Corley Moore, Firehouse Vigilance, Weekly Scrap, number 129. My guest this fine evening is Steve Stawecki. He is a firefighter at Macomb Township Fire Department with 2 decades in the fire service, where he is currently the training officer. He has the degrees. He is working on degrees. He is passionate about the fire service, especially when it comes to mental mindset and attitude towards training. If he is not at the fire station or the drill ground, you can find him at the baseball diamond, where he is also passionate about his sons playing ball. It is my pleasure to welcome you, Steve Stawecki, to the Scrap, number 129.
Thanks, Corley, for having me. I really appreciate you having me on.
Dude, I'm excited. Is there anything I missed in the intro?
Oh, man, you're good.
Try to keep it short and sweet. Audience, get your questions ready, primed, and ready to go for Steve. If you find value in the Scrap, remember, go to firehousevigilance.com. I always tell people my goal is to never read ad copy at the beginning, so here I am reading ad copy, basically saying go support the Scrap at firehousevigilance.com. Kyle Romagus, the producer of the Scrap, is fielding your questions and posting them so we don't miss anything. And with all that being said, we're ready to kick this off. Steve, are you ready, sir?
I am ready, sir.
All right. I want to start with, it's very important to tell everyone how we got here. So I'm going to let you tell it in your own words, and I'll embellish any details from my side of things.
Sounds good, man. So I'm not exactly sure how I stumbled upon, the Scrap. It's been a while. I started watching the shows, really started listening to them in the car. You've had a number of guests on, and again, like I told you before, I don't know how I'm here, why I'm here, but I appreciate it. Putting my name up against Isaacson, Romagus, Steve Robertson, Jacob Johnson, Sean Duffy, Todd Edwards, Mo Davis. I mean, you can go on and on and on. So I really appreciate, you having me on. But I'm continually listening to these guys in the car, and I'm listening a lot in the car while I'm driving my youngest son, Cameron, to school. To the point where, he's in the car. I said, "What are you listening to?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm listening to a show called The Scrap." And he's like, "Well, who's this talking?" And if it was one of your guests, I would say who it was. And he's like, "But I keep hearing this guy's voice." I'm like, "Well, that's Corley Moore." And he says, "Well, who is he?" And I said, "Well, he runs The Scrap. This is his show." So as time progresses, he would get in the car, whether we're going to baseball, school, the grocery store, whatever it might be. And he would always say, "Hey, let's listen to The Scrap."
Nice.
And so here we are. So fast forward, a couple weeks, couple months, whatever it might be. And I come home from work or one of the job sites or whatever. And he says, "Hey, I did something today." I said, "What's that?" He goes, I messaged Corley and told him that you should be on The Scrap." And I'm like, ha, 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 funny. He's like, "No, I'm serious." I'm like, "You did what?" Like, you can't do that. You know what I mean? I'm nobody from nowhere, Cam. Like, he has, the best of the best, all these great minds of the fire service. I'm nobody. Like, I get it. So I rush, grab my phone, I message you, "Hey man, I'm so sorry, yada, yada, yada." And your response was like, "Hey, it's cool. Your kid loves you. It's really neat to, for him to do that." And, one thing led to another. Water on the fire, we're heading down there as a family. Kind of funny because the wife's like, "You're going to Florida without us?" No. So got in the family truckster, headed down, and one of his questions on the way was, "Will Corley be there?" And I said, "I believe he's going to." So kind of cool in the lobby, before the conference, we're sitting there in our bathing suits coming in from the sun and just kind of watching everybody, walk around and talk. And all of a sudden Cameron goes, "There's Corley." And sure as shit, here you come, introduce yourself, and introduce yourself to Cameron. So it was really cool, man. He really got a kick out of it. And if you don't mind, he's standing right here. You'd like to say hi real quick?
Yeah, bring him on.
Hey, Corley.
Hey, dude, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Doing really good, brother. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
You going to make it back down to Florida?
Yeah, actually, we plan on going, so it'll be pretty cool.
Very awesome. Very awesome.
So, yeah, fast forward to, or rewind a couple weeks ago, just kind of sitting there. And I know we messaged you about, one of your shows and stuff like that. And you're like, "Hey, what are you doing on this date?" And I'm like, "Yeah, right. Are you serious?" And hey, man, here we are.
No doubt about it. Hey, I want you to know something. It's like you mentioned all those names and say, "What are you doing being on here?" And the truth of the matter is, it's like, what am I doing being on here with all those names? And so it is what it is. And you have passion about the fire service. I have passion about the fire service, and now we're going to spread it. All right.
Yeah.
I am going to catch you up. We've got Let's Get to Scrapping from Andrew McGinn. Smoothbore Cartel says I'm in, so Kyle is here and ready to go. Robert, hey, I saw you like only yesterday, it seems like. Robert McLeland said, what's up? Steve Kaiser is waving from, with an Australian flag. Andrew McGinn said, my girls are the same way, always listening to fire stuff. And then John Sherstead, without even having to give me the pronunciation, John Sherstead said, oh my God, this is the best. Way to go, little man. Man, it really is. Dude, it really is a cool story. I'm sorry. When I got the message, man, I was on Instagram and it was like, what? I'm not quite sure what to do with this. You know what I'm saying? And then, like you said, I met you at Water on the Fire and we had a good conversation. You're a passionate guy. And we had a good conversation about your story. And from there, and the coolest part, man, is what's better than your son believing in you? You know what I'm saying? Is there anything better than that?
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Like I said, I have 3 sons, 3 great boys, I should say, now becoming men, 2 of them. And just last night, my older boys came over to the Firehouse, had dinner with us. I'm just kind of chilled. And my middle one's really into NASCAR, so we ended up watching, the end of the NASCAR race and just kind of hanging out. And it's really neat. They're proud of me. I know they are. They tell me all the time. So I said, if you raise them right, you're doing a good job, I guess.
No, that's awesome, man. Dude, there's nothing better than kids that are proud of their father. I mean, I'm trying to think of something I would take more pride in.
Yeah.
Katie Smiluski. Man, we got some Staweckis. We got some Smiluskis. Hey, Steve, good to see you, brother. James. All right, man. So there's the backstory, and it's very, very awesome story, man. Very, very awesome. Okay, get your questions ready as we deep dive into this, because now we're going to get into Steve's story, how you got into training. So again, I'm just going to kind of toss you the ball and let you run with it, and then we'll deep dive after that or dig into it.
Sure. So back in 2006, we caught a fire. It was February 2006, actually. It was one of those strings, man, where we had some fires and, you missed them. Me personally, I was missing all the fires. And unfortunately, I was getting all the traumas. So, guys will be guys around the firehouse kind of joking around. We end up catching this fire and they're like, hey, no matter what happens, we're giving you the line. I'm like, sweet,
Right on.
And by this time, I'm about 4 or 5 years on the job. And I can tell you that I knew everything there was to know about firefighting at that time. I make no bones about it. I knew everything. You could not tell me what to do, Corley.
Now, so I'm interrupt. Are you saying that in a sarcastic way, or are you saying?
Absolutely.
Okay, just making sure because I want to be clear.
Yep. So we arrived. Essentially, it was a detached garage, shed, small pole barn, whatever it might be. I was going pretty good, and got off, masked up, pulled the line. And went up to this fire. And I was in between 2 cars that were parked there. And the barn doors, like the sliding doors kind of, were about to fall off. So guys went around the side, yanked them off. And I got hit by heat. And the only way I can describe it is you sitting around the campfire and someone throws a log on and it gets a little too hot and just kind of back up.
Sure.
So I just kind of back up. And I'm waiting on water, and I'm waiting on water. We had problems, getting water to my line. And I can't say that it got overly hot. Adrenaline must have been rushing or something like that. And what seemed like minutes was probably, eternity. Finally, one of our captains came up, and he's like, you guys got to get back. By that time, we got water. Hey, went in and put the fire out. Did what we did. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Ran out of air, came out. And my buddy who was running the pump, he's like, man, you're like smoking. And I'm laughing. I'm like, it's February, man. It's cold out. It's like, negative 50 here. I'm walking out of a hot environment.
Right.
Cold. So I'm about to take off my helmet and I look down at my mask and my eyes cross. And I'm like, oh my God, I have ice on my mask already. Like, man, it must be really cold. So I take off my mask and I look, and from my nose down, including my regulators, melted.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, holy crap, like, oh, this is awesome. You know what I mean? We're going to wear it like a badge of honor. All of a sudden, like, my hands, like, just felt weird. I take off my one glove, and my left hand, I have golf ball size blister already. And I'm like, holy shit. take off my right glove, and 2 of my knuckles are marble size already. So now everything like starts hitting home. Like like I'm screwed up. Like
Right.
there's something on here. So one of our officers come over and we kind of explain what's going on. We had an ambulance there. So we walk over to the ambulance, kind of shedding gear. And I get to the back of the ambulance, climb in. And by this time, my leg is hurting. Take off my bunker pants, cut my pant leg, and I have like baseball size blister on my leg already. On the way to the hospital, you know what I mean? Your adrenaline starts kicking in. You're nervous as hell. You know, it's like, oh my God, now I'm having trouble breathing. It was all in your mind, you know. You're kind of worried about what's going on. Excuse me. So long story short is 2nd-degree burns on my hands and leg. Cost me 9 weeks on the job or off the job. I mean, it was so bad that my oldest son, who was under a year old, I couldn't even lift him up because my hands were, you know, wrapped up.
Just so messed up, right?
We got our the pack back from MSA. We had MSA at the time, and if I remember correctly, they said anywhere from like 30 to 45 seconds, I probably would have had pack failure. So the next breath, or you know, next 2 breaths could have been my last if I had not gotten out of that environment. So it grounds you, man. I mean, it really hit home. I was really angry for a long time, because I got burned because it was everyone else's fault, Corley. It wasn't my fault. It was everybody else's fault. So as I started to ask some questions around the department, I wasn't getting the answers that I wanted. You know, all the finger pointing went toward me.
So you're saying in an anger kind of way how you went about.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Correct. You know, everyone was pointing the finger at me. You were too aggressive. You shouldn't have been there. It was a BS fire. You know what I mean? There was no life safety involved. You know, there was nothing. You should have, you know, pulled yourself back, waited for the waited for the water, you know, put it on the fire, and that's it. It took a long time for me to actually look in the mirror and realize that, you know what, it was my fault. It took too long, Corley. So I started asking, you know, questions when I started to get back on the job, saying, you know, why are we doing stuff like this? You know, our tactics have taught me to be like this. Our trainings in the past, you know, up until that point and maybe a year after that, you know, we got together for training and it was almost social hour. You know,
Right.
we never really put hard time into it. So I started reaching out to some people outside of my department and asking questions, you know, and they said, well, why'd you do this and why'd you do that? Well, I was always taught that way. Like, this
Right.
is how we do things. And, you know, Nick hit a good point last week on your show. Nobody was asking why. So I started asking the questions, why are we doing things, you know, like this? Why are we not, you know, talking about proper hose stretches? You know, why are we, you know, putting ourselves in these positions on a BS fire when we shouldn't be in these spots? You know, I went to that spot and I shouldn't have been in that spot, you know, and it essentially almost cost me my life, you know, kind of.
Very clear. Yeah, near miss, without a doubt.
It was, man. And even getting back on the job, as I was telling you earlier, it was hard to get on the truck again. You know, that was in the back of my mind for a long time. Like, you know, what happens if this happens again? You know, I have a family, you know, to consider. You know, I got a kid, you know, a wife at the time, and, you know, I want to be around for that. So it emotionally, you know, it took a toll.
No doubt.
So slowly, as we progress through the story, you know, I started asking questions to our new trainers at the time.
I want to interrupt you right here in this small segue point, because I want to dig in on something that you said earlier, which was at first you were angry, you know, and then over time you progressed towards actually realizing it was your fault. Was there anything specific, any point, or what basically what I'm asking, was there anything you can point at that really kind of helped you make that shift, or any realization, or anybody you talked to, or
Yeah, one of our former captains who's now retired, man named Dave Minnie. I remember sitting in his office, and I was not yelling at him, but I was assertive, you know, like, hey, Cap, you know, like, this isn't my fault. And he kind of looked at me and he goes, and my nickname's Stewie. He's like, Stewie, he's like, this is your fault. So what do you mean? This isn't my fault. We couldn't get water. You know, nobody pulled me back. You know, it was too late to pull me back. And he said, you shouldn't have been there in the first place. Well, why?
right?
And this is the why, you know, kind of.
This is where the why came from. Okay. No, it's awesome.
So we got a new, in moving forward, we got a new chief, and he assigned now a former captain who's also retired, a lieutenant at the time, to the training division. And he really laid the foundation of our training for the better, a guy named Gary Ross. And I remember going to him with one of my good friends and said, hey, you know, we got this idea for training. Like, we want to start making things better. And we want to do a search and rescue training. We have this beautiful training tower out back. And the lieutenant at the time, he's like, come on, yeah, great. You guys want to help out? Like, this is awesome. So one training led to another. Next thing you know, we're doing some hose advancement. And of course, you know, we're getting pushback because, you know, we want to start training, but we want to start training the right way. You know, we're coming up with these ideas, but as I call, we're doing our homework first. We're not just like, hey, let's do a search and rescue, throw a mannequin or a live victim in the training tower, you know, smoke it out, go find them out, you know, pull them out. You know, we're really, you know, doing our due diligence and homework, you know, researching and talking to people and stuff like that. So as time progresses, Gary gets promoted to captain and is reassigned, and we get another training officer who was there kind of for a year or two, couple of years before he was promoted. And I basically kind of walked into the position. July will be 9 years as a training officer.
Nice. Which
is a long time. Yeah. You know, most departments don't have that. So I'm proud of that fact, and I'm still
no doubt about it, because the turnover rate on training officers is atrocious, is the best word I could put on it. Now, how much did that experience push you in that position, and how much does it still push you?
It still pushes me a lot. I mean, I didn't realize when I took over the position how important and how much responsibility is really on your shoulders. One of the first things I did is I found I started, again, what I call doing my homework. And on the west side of the state, big city out there, Grand Rapids, was having the ISFSI's training officer credential program come in. So I found it online, and I sent it to my chief, and he's like, go. And it was a 2-day class, you know, it had like 30 hours of pre-course work. And I'll tell you, man, my hat's off to that program. It was awesome. But I walked out of there on Sunday afternoon going, wow, I feel like the weight of the world's on my shoulders. You know, every time something goes wrong, you know, it's on you. Something happens in training, it's on you.
On you.
You know, you get to the fire ground, the guy gets burned, you know, who's the chief going to come to? You know, why did this happen? You know, why are we not training? You know, why does he not know what to do, or he or she does not know what to do? So there's a lot of responsibility to it, but man, I tell you, I absolutely love it. I know that I'm kind of on the downhill, you know, and I'm prepping my next guy. I got 2 training coordinators on opposite shifts. One guy named Tom Putnam, love him to death. He's that guy, man. If I can handpick my replacement, I'm telling you, Corley, he's the next guy for it.
That's good that you're investing in the succession training, man. I mean, that's huge.
And that's one thing that, you know, I felt, in personal opinion, I didn't have.
Right.
You know, we had a guy there, but the conversation wasn't there, you know. And Tom's a great story. He came on a few years ago onto the career side on our department. And I remember when he was on our other side, our paid on call side, we worked a couple shifts together. And all of a sudden we're working some other shifts. And Tom was always kind of guilty by association. He was with a group of some of our guys. At the time, again, this was some years ago, they always didn't put the effort into training, I felt, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Just kind of,
no, I know what you're saying.
You know, but I started having these private one-on-one conversations with Tom, and you realize that he really wants to get involved. You know, he really wants to, you know, start training, you know, and all that stuff. So fast forward to, you know, all these changes within our department. When it came to picking, you know, what we call training coordinators for opposite shifts, I mean, it was a slam dunk, man.
Done deal. Oh, awesome. I'm going to catch you up. Craig Coburn said, thanks for sharing your story. Most of us have very similar experiences to some degree. And I think that's the big key is there's a lot of people that have something like this, but people don't talk about it. You know what I'm saying? It's almost has the same stigma as mental health as far, you know, of the I screwed up. I screwed up on a fire and I'm willing to admit it and own it. You know what I'm saying? Because of and strictly out of, and I don't mean this in an insulting way, strictly out of ignorance, you don't know what you don't know until you realize in a bad way that you don't know it.
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt. Absolutely no doubt.
Westbrook Terror says, gut-wrenching story hammers home the point of solid training, especially for places where fires are down and guys aren't catching jobs, which is, you know, the bulk of the American Fire Service.
Oh, absolutely.
Unless you're lucky enough to be in a job town, You
Yes.
know, Tony Nunez, dude, sorry I couldn't get out there. It was so busy, but I wanted to say that to you. Tony, 9 years of consistent progress is what it sounds like to me. The best training all too often comes from the worst experiences.
Yep.
And I love this, and a lot of people did. Smoothbore Cartel Kyle chimed in and said the fire service is one of the only gigs where the lesson comes after the test.
Isn't that the truth?
100%.
Isn't that the truth?
And Kyle's one of the few people that can use the word gigs and make it work. So absolutely. All right. Nozzle study. You spent 2 years on a nozzle study, and I think a lot of people resonate with this. You know, at least the nerds do. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's like I understand because hose and nozzle. I did not know what I didn't know until I dug in, and met people like Kyle.
Oh yeah, and James, one of my good friends from northern Michigan, Traverse City. I'm gonna.
Hey, I'm gonna throw this question at you before we get into it because BJ Breacher threw a question right there when I read that. So we'll get to the nozzle study. BJ Breacher said, Steve and Corley, you both agree with the notion of high turnover rate for training officers. Mm-hmm. I have my own theory and experience on this issue, but what are your thoughts on why we have that high turnover of training officers? So I'll throw it at you first. What do you think the reason is for the high turnover on training officers?
Nobody wants to do it. It's a thankless job. And I was just talking to some of my guys today. You know, in my personal opinion, training is the easiest thing to pick on within a department. You know, we go out to the training tower. You know, we do a hose advancement drill, and I pull off a line a certain way. You know, flake it a certain way. Guys will say, you know what? I do it a different way, and now it sucks. You know, it's not the right way. So you take a lot of crap. I mean, over these 9 years, I have taken a lot of crap. You know, and I've come to realize that you need thick skin.
Without a doubt.
It's I had a hard time with it for a long time. I really did. One of the biggest things I learned is not everybody is into the job as much as I am. Nobody loves it, or I can't say nobody. A lot of guys don't love the job the way that I love the job. And I took it to heart when I would really, you know, plan for a cool drill, you know, cool training, and you're all excited for it. And not a lot of guys show up, or they put in a half-ass effort, and then you're bummed. You know, it takes the wind right out of your sails. And I realized a long time ago that, you know, you're going to get the attention of the firefighters that want to be there, you know. And again, baseball family, every time you swing for a home run, you're going to miss. You're going to strike out, you're going to pop out, something of that nature. You have to go for the base hits. When you start hitting the base hits, and, you know, my training coordinator, Tom's a perfect example. He was my base hit. Eventually, you're going to get a double, you know, and you're hoping sometime you'll get a triple or a home run, you know. But for the most part, if you're consistent with your base hits and you concentrate on the people that truly want to be there and want to make themselves better, it's all worthwhile.
No, without a doubt. I want to give an answer, and I don't. Here's the deal. I'm not in a training officer position, so this is strictly outside looking in. And I think I'm going to step back to a bigger view of, I think it's part of the problem with the American Fire Service, and I don't want to just blame all hazards because we are the Swiss Army knife. We solve everybody's problems, and they call 911 and we go. So, but the all hazards approach has weakened the fire service first, or fire first culture is weakened it. And so if training officers could focus on fire first training, I think that they would be much more successful. But the fact that they have to check so many boxes between EMS and hazmat and all just the all hazards approach, not to mention all the boxes they have to check for like computer aided training and solution, anything with solutions in it.
Right.
and I don't know. I mean, it's just it's fatigue from those who could be engaged and excited and have their morale boosted by. We joined this job to kick ass at fires and save lives. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not taking away from the others, but so anyway, that's my little bit. Is the all hazards approach has a cost, and we're seeing that especially since 2001 and the move towards hazmat and EMS over the last 30 years, and the the loss of focus on a fire first culture. So anyway, that's my opinion for what it's worth. Not a lot of comments here. So I'm going to read them to you, Steve. You're coming at. Yeah, there's a lot. Okay. Catching up. Smoothbore Cartel said facts. I agree. Gotta move my cursor. Dave Black said the training officer gets overtasked with anything else the other chiefs don't want to do. They don't get to focus on training and people lose interest, or it is just a stepping stone and they are overly focused on the next position, which is very, very valid, especially in a lot of organizations. Todd Hunt said, definitely speaking the truth. Jacob Johnson, my man, do your damn job, said training is the most important division of the fire department, but it's the first to be picked on, picked from, and pushed back for politics. Those who don't love the job and those who think they are better than you, but never step up. Basically, the haters.
Yep.
Joe Valentine said, just assigned as training officer. Oh, yeah, here we go. I'll get to that one in a second. Velton Smith said, yes, but the feeling of helping someone overcome a fear of ladders or claustrophobia and then to watch them continue progressing is priceless, and they will never forget that, which I'm going to ask you about that in a bit, is what keeps you going. So I want to come back in that. Smoothbore Cartel said, be brilliant in the basics, as my brother Howard would say. And everybody loves Chief Reinwald. Okay, so Joe Valentine's question, just assigned as training officer, what's your number one piece of advice for others just starting out? Also from Michigan, would love to get in contact with you. So
Absolutely, my friend. We can definitely have a conversation. I would say reach out to other training officers within your area. Find out what they're doing. Educate yourself on what has to be done yearly. When I make the training schedule up for the upcoming year, I always say once you hit all the check boxes, as you said, Corley, at the end of the day, there's not a lot of fun stuff left to do because we have to do so many things. Your bloodborne pathogens, your hazmats, all that stuff. So when it comes down to it, there's not much playroom, to do. So know exactly what you have to put out there on a yearly basis, and then find out even canvassing your department, whether it's a survey or just having open conversation. And that's the biggest thing that I've learned over the last few years is having conversation. Emails are great, text messages are great, but they're always read the wrong way. Have that face-to-face conversation.
Yes.
Go, sit down at the kitchen table or the tailboard with some coffee, or like I think you said it the other week, maybe in the evening hours or, in the back, with a cigar or something like that.
Absolutely.
Have those one-on-one conversations and say, hey, what do you guys think that we're lacking in? Where do you think our weaknesses are? Because that's the things that you really need to focus on. EMS, like you said, I hate to say it, but for the most part, suburban, that's our bread and butter. It's, as much as we like it, we don't like it, But we have to focus on, like Kyle said, the basics. It's always back to the basics. And, once you master the basics, then you can start to go on to the advanced stuff. But again, learn what you have to, reach out, and please get a hold of me, later on, and we can have a great conversation.
No, 100%. And Joe Valentine, Functional Fire Company, written by Chief Scott Thompson. His whole training regimen that's in that book. I think it's the big five and the first five, or if I get it wrong, if I get the numbers wrong, it's been a while since I looked at the book. That's huge. And Steve said it best. The basics and the big five and the first five is massive.
His book I actually stopped highlighting because everything was highlighted.
Yeah, it's just one giant highlighted color. Dude, without a doubt. It's one of the greatest books on earth.
I've never met the chief personally. Hopefully someday I have the opportunity to shake his hand. Every department has their inner struggles, but from the outside looking in, man, I think this guy's got it going on. I think he's got it a lot figured out.
If anybody can post a link to the Functional Fire Company and even his website, fireserviceleadership.com, amazing resource. And he puts out he put out the mentorship thing for free, and then he put out the training document for free.
Yeah. And
so both of them are just amazing resources. So get it and get there. Smooth Gore, I'm going to try and catch up. Sergeant Stu, Joseph Wayne said, Sergeant Stu, I'm assuming he's talking to you.
Yeah.
Made many of us 100 times better after our 1 year of nonstop RIT training. Made many men more confident in the job. So there you go.
Mr. Joe there, he is a great guy. I will freely admit publicly in this forum that nobody gives him more shit than I. But I tell you what, this guy's got a heart of gold. This man walks across the state of Michigan every year to raise money for firefighter cancer. It's called Walk the 140. He walks literally from Metro Detroit to Grand Rapids on the other side. He's actually down in Texas right now doing it down there to raise awareness for firefighter cancer. So my hat's off to you, Joe. Thank you very much for the nice compliment. Love you, brother, and I'll see you when you get back.
And our man Kyle, who is chief of training, says, Chief Romagus, I have to remember that. Chief Romagus says, you have, all caps, you have to go to the fire scenes. The two must see the men work in order to create a needs analysis to begin to increase operational success. You can't do that from the office.
Yeah, that's the one thing that's kind of different about us too. And again, we're growing. We have been growing over the years. I'm still on 24s, so I'm not a 40-hour position. So I'm still on the rig. I could be knee deep in lesson plans and getting everything set up in the training tower, and hey, the tone drops, man. I still got to go. So I'm kind of fortunate in that end. You know what I mean? I'm still out there. Chief Kyle said, I'm still evaluating. I'm always evaluating. It's the one thing I think I do the most is kind of stand back a little bit and watch everything kind of play out. You know what I mean? Help when I need to, but I still like to weasel my way into things though.
Beautiful. Bill Hobson says the training officer knows his personnel better than they know themselves. He or she has the opportunity to take a fireman's career and a department to places never thought of. There is something to be said for the training officer who stands the test of time and constantly influences others, even if they come from the smallest of places on the Jersey Shore.
Yeah, Mr. Hobson's one of my mentors. Good guy right there.
Good deal. Solid. Okay. I never know who's saying it sometimes. Sometimes I do, obviously, but sometimes I don't know the validity or the inside reference. You know what I'm saying? So. Yep.
No, I got a great story about him, man. Talk about mentoring a little bit, kind of down in the dumps some years ago. Wasn't finding that right mentorship. I wish I would have, met Jacob Johnson, a long time ago. And, we've never really talked yet, and hopefully we'll have that conversation someday. But when he was on your show, man, was I impressed. Mm-hmm. I've been fortunate to go to a lot of conferences, and a few years ago prior to FDIC, I remember Aaron Heller, being on one of the Hump Day hangouts, I think it was.
Right.
Asking about mentors, and seek out that mentor. So I started, asking around a little bit, and I sent him a message, and I'm not afraid to reach out to people.
Right.
So I explained my story. I'm like, hey, there's no one in my area. Like, I don't know what to do. So he sends me a name of a chief on the west side of the state. Excuse me. I send him an email, and he's like, hey, I really appreciate you, reaching out, but unfortunately, I'm 3 hours away, and I can give you some guys, on your side of the state, maybe you guys can work something out, yada, yada, yada. Chief Cleveland and I, stayed in contact. Fast forward to the Michigan Fire Service Instructors Association has an instructor conference in Traverse City. One thing I love about Michigan, Corley, I can tell you I'm here and Traverse City's here, so I can just point, to where we are. So I meet Chief Cleveland a few years ago at the conference. We're talking, and he introduced me to Bill Hobson. And he goes, hey, this is one of Aaron Heller's guys. So Bill's retired, out of New Jersey, and we just hit it off. And I tell you, we're still very close friends today. I can pick up the phone at any time, and give him a call, and we get to see each other once or twice a year. And he's one of those guys, man. I could sit there and listen to him for hours, just old war stories and training. Like he said, how to be a great training officer. So my hat's off to Bill. I love that, man.
It's awesome, man, dude. And let's not be. You got 10 years in the training officer position. I mean, you're knocking on a decade. So
yeah.
So there's a lot of people that would love to are trying to pick your brain. Blaine Redwine says, "What advice?" This is a tough question, but I mean, what advice would you give on trying to get the wheels rolling on a training officer that has had the wind knocked out of them or has lost motivation due to all the pushback from admin or the politics in general?
Is he describing me? Because that's exactly what I felt I've gone through over the years.
I think he's describing every training officer basically in existence for any length of time. I mean, it's funny. It comes across as a joke, but I mean, very, very true.
Oh no, absolutely. I lived it. I did. I feel like he's telling my story almost. The biggest advice I can say is take a deep breath, and you have to find that reset button somewhere. You have to find what motivates you. You know, I went through a bad period, you know, and I felt like I was getting shit on all the time. I couldn't do anything right, you know. And again, my dynamics are a little different than most because I was still on the line, you know. So we've come a long way. When we first started, we were 40 hours and then went to 10 hours and then 12-hour shifts, and now we're on 24s. But all through that time, you know, 8 and 10s, you know, you're trying to get training stuff done, but you're taking runs.
Yeah.
You know, next thing you know, your shift is over and you're going home. But that reset button, you got to find somewhere. And typically for me, honestly, was my family coming home. You know, I might vent a little bit, you know, but when that kid comes up to you and he hugs you and says everything's going to be all right, you know, that was one of the biggest things for me. And then also, you know, your inner circle within your department. You have that close group of people that you can rely on, that you can vent to, that you know it's going to stay in that safe room, for lack of a better term. And they help you get through those times. And once you find it, you know, that motivation keeps going. And the other thing for me was going to conferences. You know,
Nice.
my first conference was huge. I remember I went with my chief, and we're sitting there. We got to FDIC on a Sunday. We're sitting there having dinner and a drink, you know, and all these guys are walking by, and I'm like, that's Mike Champo. You know, you know, and he's kind of looking at me weird, and I'm like, it was awesome. You know what I mean? And
Believe me, I know the feeling.
It's almost like Disney World. You know what I mean? For lack of a better term.
No, it is. It's like going to the walk of the Hollywood tour bus tour and spotting a rock star, movie star. Yeah, 100%. I would say this: it's in the sports. They say wins fix everything. You know what I'm saying? And 100% for Blaine Redwine's advice: wins fix everything. So for us, fires fix everything. So we can't control when we get fires. So for me, and again, Steve, I give the caveat: I'm not a training officer, but for me, fire training. If you can't pick tons of fires, fire training fixes everything, man. Legitimate fire training keeps people excited and plugged in. So.
Yep.
That's my advice for an outsider. All right. Now I want to get to your nozzle study, because there's a whole bunch of questions coming at you for the training. So give us the story on the nozzles.
So again, I've been fortunate enough to, go to a lot of conferences. I've been to FDIC a number of years, headed back this year, which I'm excited about. And we hit Firehouse Expo a couple of times when it was down in Nashville. First couple years going, I was taking classes I just thought were cool. Every live fire class I could take, you know what I mean? Did a lot of leadership classes and stuff like that, you know, when it got to the later in the week in the classroom. But after, a couple of years, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm taking these classes, but I'm bringing them back, but they're not something that we can actually implement. You know, it just doesn't work for us.
Sure.
You know, like we have a truck, but we don't run a true truck company, you know?
Right.
And at the time, just for I used to love truck work. You know, I wanted to be a truckie. I've seen the light now, and I'm a totally engine guy. But a study came out last August that was released locally here. So our township is very unique. We're the fastest growing township in the state right now.
Okay.
We have 14 brand new subdivisions on the books, or that have started. We have 2 brand new senior centers that have opened up. We have 2 or 3 more that are in the works, our first hotel. We're just, at the time of the study, we were like 93,000 residents. So we're probably pushing 100,000 now.
Okay.
So we're fast growing.
Right.
So when we get fires though, again, modern day construction, right? We have very little textbook legacy construction.
Right.
So we have everything that's kind of brand new. So we all know it just burns hot and fast.
You're just a Boomberg.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, our bread and butter when it comes to, putting out fires is engine work. So, we probably should master that. So I head down to Firehouse Expo and I take this hands-on class, and the guy running it, John Hall, out of Minneapolis, or St. Paul, Minnesota. And one of my first rotations or stations, if you want to call that, I meet a guy named Andy Plufkin, from Elkhart Brass.
Right on.
And I love Andy, and we have become very good friends. So we're sitting there in the first rotation, and they started talking about, like gallons per minute and what you're flowing. And they're asking everybody, like, what kind of nozzles do you have? And I said, I got one of those. It's a combination. I'm like, fog nozzle. I said, yeah. Well, what kind? I don't know.
Yeah.
Is it fixed gallons or is it adjustable? Well, it's adjustable, I guess. You guess. So what's your setting on it? Well, 150 gallons a minute. Well, are you getting 150 gallons a minute out of that line? Well, yeah. Well, how do you know? Because I have it right here. It says 150.
Right.
So, I mean, that specific rotation really got the wheels going.
Right on.
It was awesome. I was introduced to something that they call a smoothbore. What is that? I saw one in a textbook 15 years ago at the time, So they started talking about low pressures and stuff like that. And I'm like, this is all like, I feel like a dumbass. Like I didn't know anything.
Dude, 100%. You're telling my story right now.
We were never educated. And again, it goes back to the why. So went through the day, had an awesome experience between pulling lines. One of the rotations was, this 2.5, right? We're going to flow this 2.5 and you're going to do it by yourself. And I'm like, no, you're not. Like, have you seen me? I'm like 150 pounds soaking wet.
Right.
Like there's no way I'm going to hold this thing by myself. So I remember this guy, the instructor, and I wish I remember his name. He was, built as a brick shit house. He's like, man, I'll back you up. I said, okay. So we're flowing water, 1.8" tip. And we're talking. Next thing you know, he's standing beside me. And I'm like, who the hell's behind me? He's like, nobody, man. It's all technique. I'm like, holy shit.
Right on.
So it was cool. So go back. We start to have the conversation a little bit. FDIC the next year. I wish I remember Steve Robertson's class. I want to say it was the first year that he did the classroom portion. And I don't remember if it was called Stretching for Success at the time.
Right.
The biggest lesson I learned, I told him down at Water on the Fire, we had a nice conversation for a few minutes, is taking an uncharged hose line into a structure, how he would never do it. And I'm looking at our construction again, which is, so much brand new construction, And years ago, we used to get these lightning strikes, Corley. Excuse me. The old timers, within our community would tell you it's because of all the old cornfields. I grew up on concrete. I can't tell you that's true or not. But every time we got a storm, we would get a lightning strike. And I can't tell how many times it would hit a peak of a 2-story, colonial, and you pull up and you have flames, 10 to 15 feet off the roof, but you hit that front door and it's clear as day throughout the entire structure. Everything's in the attic.
Right on.
And to his point, you stretch that dry and you take one poke and everything comes down on top of you. Now you have nothing to fight off with. And I'm like, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Again, why didn't somebody tell me this 20 years ago? And I caught a lot of shit for that too, like, hey guys, we're not going to go into the structure without taking, unless the line is charged. We need to take a charged hose line in. And people fought me on it, but still to this day, at least my shift, I can say we're very good at that, always taking a charged hose line. So as we continue, I'm hitting more conferences and stuff like that, and really starting to get to know Andy from Elkhart. He had another guy working for him named Mike Caesar. He was our Michigan rep. They came out and they educated us. I mean, they truly educated us. We had another nozzle company come out a year prior to them. They didn't do anything really. And it doesn't matter who it is. They just kind of pulled up their pickup truck, asked what we wanted to see. We flowed some water. They were gone within like an hour, hour and a half. Andy and Mike came out. And they just started again with that conversation.
No, 100%.
It was great. And my partner in crime with this, Chris, who I think you met down at Water on the Fire, the big tall guy.
Yeah.
It's his birthday, by the way. Happy birthday, Chris. He and I together, took on this project.
I'll say happy birthday from the scrap.
You want to talk about pushback. I had a guy tell my partner at work, Steve took one class and he thinks he's a freaking expert. Like, come on, man. Like, really?
Right on.
So COVID hit, which kind of slowed everything down. But luckily, Mike lived close enough in the metro area. I gave him a call one day. He goes, hey, man, I'm going to put everything out on my porch. We're grounded right now. Whatever you need, take, and then I'll get it back, as the world starts to open up again. So we had nozzles, we had flow meters, and we had these Akron 1763 adjustable gallon nozzles. So these are, designed for high pressure, at the tip.
No, 100%. Yeah. No, that
it's at the tip.
just ass
So
kickers. What I call
Oh,
ass kickers.
we didn't know that. Corey.
No, 100%. That's just how you fought fire. You got your ass kicked by the hose.
Well, at the time, our PDP, our pump discharge pressure, was 100. So if we have 100 at the truck and we're going through a cross lay that's 200 feet, we still have.
You're losing.
I'm not a mathematics guy. Chris, I'll tell you, he's the guy. So we put on these gauges, we put on the flow meter, and we realized that our pump discharge pressure had to be around 140, 145. So we bump it up. So now the engine's screaming, right? You think it's going to blow up because it's not used to pumping that, that hard. And now we're at 100 PSI at the tip. And like you said, it's an ass kicker.
Now you're getting your ass kicked. Right. Okay.
That's a 3-man job. So then, we take on the other line, with the flow meter, and we put on, a 160 at 50 chief tip and, a 7/8 tip on the other one. And we're showing guys, 50 PSI at this tip, this is more manageable. And it all goes back to manpower. Now, I don't know how you work, Corley, but, we have 9 guys full-time, on duty each day. We have a paid on-call system, and they can work shifts, but we train like we have 9 guys on. So if we get something serious, we'll even say a room and contents is, might be, spreading out into the hallway. We start making that push and flowing and moving. And once we start getting water on the fire, we got to start searching off that line too. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely.
With those lower pressures, we're able to do that because with that higher pressure, we're not able to do that.
No, 100%.
So it was a long time coming. It was a lot of pushback. It was a very stressful time for Chris and I, going through this. But at the end of the day, sitting down with the chief, he's like, hey, listen, this is something that we really need to do. Get all the quotes. Let's finally just get this thing done. So we were able to get it done. We made the move to combinations. We did a combination as in smoothbore and fog nozzles. So we ended up with 160 at 50. Our cross lays are the combination nozzles. 1 pistol grip for the people that want pistol grips. And I'm telling you right now, I'm not a fan of the pistol grip. Never will be. It is what it is. That's the coffee table debate,
Sure.
that we have over pop someday, And then off the back, we have a rear bundle connected 2.5 to 1 3/4 inch. We ended up going with 7/8 tip there.
Right on.
And we ended up having used to have 150 feet of 2.5 on a rear hose bed connected to a small ground monitor. We ended up getting rid of that ground monitor and the 2.5, and we actually went to 2 1/4.
Nice.
So
is it the 2 1/4 True ID?
No, it's the PON.
Okay.
The True Attack. We ended up going to True Attack. Still really good hose.
No.
We really
I don't have any experience with it, so I was just wondering.
And we're still getting a 265 out of it, which is awesome with our 1/8" long boy tip. And it's kind of funny. One of our neighboring communities last week had a third alarm fire. They had a commercial area go up, and I had heard through the grapevine that one of the other shifts, they were there for like 8 hours, 9 hours, whatever it was. It was that big. And he goes, man, we're sitting on this 2 1/4 with our, smooth bore tip, and everything's fine. We get pulled, we take a break, and then we get reassigned to a 2.5 with some other department's 2.5 with a play pipe. He goes, and we're getting our asses kicked. Right. And I start laughing. I'm like, this is what I've been preaching for, 2.5, 3 years
and
now.
They get to live it like side by side. Yeah.
Exactly. You know what I mean? So it was a long, hard process. But in the end, man, it was definitely the right thing to do. I always tell the guys, and I've experienced it, and other shifts are experiencing it. Our fun time on a structure fire, and when I say fun, it's that stretch, into the house, and actually flowing water is going down. And the reason why it's going down is we're overcoming those BTUs.
Yes.
We're putting the appropriate amount of water on it, quickly.
Hey, and in a big droplet form.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes. Dude, I love
One of the things I like to do too, we have that training tower, Class A training tower. And every time we have live burns, at the end of the burns, we overstack the burn room with pallets, and we let it burn on the ceiling to 700-800 degrees. Get the walls, hopefully 350, 450, whatever it might be. But we talk about creating survivable space. Whether you're making that push interior or whether you're doing your transitional attack or whatever it might be you want to call it, and we can debate it, whatever. But I keep telling our guys, let's call it making survivable space.
Absolutely.
So we're taking these tips now, 160 at 50, whether it's the smooth bore or whether it's the chief tip. And literally within 10, 12 seconds, we're below that 150 mark, on the walls. So we're creating that survivable space. So that's the biggest thing that we can show our members is, putting the appropriate amount of water on it. We're really killing everything that we need to do and putting out these fires quickly. And again, creating that survivable space for anybody that might still be in there.
Right on, brother. Now you froze. You froze on there. I'm hoping you come back. Okay, I got you back.
Good.
Yep, you're back. Okay, beautiful. Chris Gruner said thanks. Smoothbore Cartel said low pressure is the win 100%. Chris Gruner also said it was worth all their crap we took to get the right attack package. Hey, it's always worth it when you get the right attack package. On pistol grips, man, my deal is this, man. Get a smoothbore into people's hands. Get a 50 PSI, 7/8, 15/16. I'm a 7/8 guy, but I can't argue with the 15/16 argument. But yeah, the 50 PSI and 165 just chunking down a hallway. It's just beautiful when you compare it to getting your ass kicked by a high pressure nozzle. So, okay. Where am I at? Pulling up the notes. Good conversation. You are obviously a very passionate firefighter. Have you always been that way, or was it growth? Like, what's your go ahead.
It was growth. That's for sure. I thought I liked the job. I thought I loved the job. And it wasn't until, honestly, I took over as training officer that I really, truly fell in love with the job. A lot of guys say they love the job, man, but I breathe the shit. I was told one time that I care too much. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, I don't understand what that means. I care too much. But yeah, no, I definitely grew into it. You know what I mean? I absolutely love this job. I breathe everything, fire for the most part. Yeah, it is what it is, man.
No, 100%. Good stuff, Steve. The bruises from getting beat up go away when they get on board and see the low pressure smoothbore light.
Yep.
That came from Katie Smilewski. I hope I'm saying it right. I really do.
Yep. Yeah, that's my James, my friend up in Traverse City. He doesn't have Facebook, so.
Oh, gotcha. All right. Where am I at here? Check and see what I missed. All right. Moving to one of my favorite questions. Book or books that you think firefighters should be reading?
I wish I could say I had something new. I don't. I'm currently reading Ordinary Heroes by Chief Pfeiffer. In the process of finishing that one. It's a real good one. A couple ones that have already been mentioned here, but have really been a lot to me, and I've taken a lot from. It's Your Ship.
Oh.
I thought that was a really good leadership book.
That's
again,
one of my favorites.
Yep. Functional Fire Company, of course. Again, I stopped highlighting. Extreme Ownership, man. I tell you, that was probably the most impactful book that I've read and taken it to the fire service. And I have a little story about that.
Go.
If you've read the book, and if you remember the one story about a mission that kind of went wrong, there were some people that were hurt, team members that were hurt, and I believe one killed. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, like the blue on blue or whatever they call it in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they go back to the base, and he gets there, and basically, he gets a phone call like, hey, the brass is coming. They want to know what the hell went wrong. And he sits everybody down after everyone gets there. And, you have guys that are raising their hands saying, it's my fault. Another guy saying, no, it's my fault. Then finally he stands up and says, hey, this was my op. I was in charge. It was essentially my fault. So I thought that was awesome how he took responsibility, because a lot of people don't take responsibility for their actions,
100%.
especially when they grew up. So go back a couple of years, we had, again, made these changes within our department. And my partner and I are sitting in my office with another sergeant on duty, my counterpart. And Corley, I wish I could tell you that we were watching a football game. Excuse me. I wish I could tell you that we were napping, screwing around. We're literally talking about training. Tones drop for fire alarm. address, blah, blah, blah. Really not paying attention to it. And again, we operated a little differently at the time. We had our own dispatchers, and we were alerted or toned out a little differently at the time. So all of a sudden, one of our guys pulls up in his truck, and he comes walking to the station, and he's like, "Hey, you going on that run?" And my partner's like, "What are you talking about?" Phone rings at my desk. It's our dispatcher. She goes, "What the F are you doing? That's your call." I'm like, "Holy shit, what?" By this time, it's some minutes had gone by.
Sure.
So, of course, we jump in our truck, head to the call. By the grace of God, it was a careless cook. It was nothing.
Right on.
We leave, my heart's pounding like, oh, my God, I screwed up. We get back in the station. My counterpart's still there, and I walk right up to him, and I said, I have to call the deputy chief and let him know what's going on. And he's like, okay. So go right back in the office. It's a Sunday. I call him, and he's like, hey, what's going on? I'm like, can you talk? I got to tell you something. He's like, yeah, what's up? I'm like, excuse my language. I go, I fucked up. He goes, what's wrong? I explained the entire story. And he goes, all right, send myself, the chief, an email and just explain exactly what happened, and, we'll deal with it. So that's what I did. I owned it right away. And, I could have easily, and other guys could have easily, tried to cover it up and push it underneath the rug. But that book right there, you screw up, man, you got to take responsibility for it right away and not, try and hide anything, So it was a good lesson for me. I still, I try to tell my boys that,
absolutely.
Something happens, just own it, man.
And the cool part is when you're in charge and you do that, then you model the behavior that you want to see from those you're in charge of, and you make it okay for them to do the same. You know what I mean? And it's such a powerful lesson. Powerful lesson. One
other book, man, I don't know if it's been mentioned in a while, but for me, the original Pass It On, Billy Goldfetter, man.
Yes, dude.
I love reading excerpts, small little stories out of that book, man. That was a very powerful book for me a couple of years ago, man, and I really, really liked that one.
Love it. Looking here, seeing if there's. Love it. Okay. No, and on extreme ownership, man, people always ask me, what book should I read as a leader? Because when I teach, I have a whole rant I do on reading, and leaders are readers and everything like that. But, and extreme ownership, if you're only going to read one book on leadership, extreme ownership is the one I say you should read.
Yeah.
That's a high praise for me. Now, it really does depend on. There's a lot of other books out there that are better. I'm not saying it's the best ever, but if you're only going to read one, I love the principles of it so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, coming from Kyle. Thoughts on your reputation as a firefighter or your tactical proficiency, regardless of rank, play into your effectiveness as the training officer? Speaking to those who say, those who can't do teach mentality.
I don't agree with that. Those who can't do teach. I feel as a training officer, you have to do in order to teach. There's nothing better than getting out there and showing them exactly what can be done. Kind of the way we train. I'm not always getting into it on the two different trains that we have on Monday nights. Vice versa. Opposite Mondays. But I get in there, man. Again, like I said earlier, I always weasel my way in there somehow. That's what I love to do. I'm first and foremost, I'm a firefighter at heart. I don't want to be behind the desk. I can't stand being behind the desk. Unfortunately, a lot of my time during the day is behind the desk for records management and, lesson plans and getting things ready. But man, sometimes when those tones drop, man, you're out the door. You know what I mean? You're in that truck before anybody else. But yeah, man, it's it's tough.
I think there are those who can't do, so they teach. I really do, and and I think it's low hanging fruit for people who want to throw stones to say those who can't do teach, but those who can also teach, and it's awesome when they do. Your
best instructors are the ones that are extremely passionate about fire service, but lead by example and go out there and show you how to do it. They don't hand over you a lesson plan or just say, hey, this is what we're going to do. They physically get down there. If they see a firefighter, doing whatever drill it might be, and they don't particularly do it right, it stop them, perform it with them or show them and then had the firefighter repeat what they did.
Absolutely. Case in point, Kyle Romigus in right now I'm just picking out his name because I love him. But I'd like to see someone say, he's one of the best teachers I know when it comes to nozzle work and hose.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to see someone say that he can't,
Right.
So, yeah. Anyway, all right. So we have a thing we do on the weekly scrap.
Yep.
It was known as the 5 questions for firefighters. It is now known as the next 5 questions for firefighters. So my question for you, Steve Stawecki, is: are you ready for the next 5 questions for firefighters?
I'm ready, sir.
All right, let's do this. It's 100%. The answers are your opinion. The points are completely arbitrary and passed out by me. Question number 1. What single characteristic makes the difference between a run-of-the-mill firefighter and the top-tier, go-to, badass firefighter? Man,
I think it's passion. I really do. I think the guys that excel have passion for the job. They have heart, and they want to be there. They want to make themselves better. They come in every day for shift, and they're always doing something to better themselves. You know what I mean? And a few guys that I know, they want to be better than the next guy. You know what I mean? They want to outperform everybody, and they do a hell of a job at it. Unfortunately, as we know, there's a lot of people out there that they're there for a paycheck and a t-shirt, man, and that's it. But those guys that are, the top tier, they put in the work, and they love the job, and they truly, truly have passion for what they do, not only for making themselves better, it makes their, shift mates better, and it makes their department better. And those are the kind of guys that, I want to run with every day.
Dude, solid. Number 2, if you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice as a rookie, what would it be?
It's okay to want to learn the job. It's okay to ask questions, and it's okay to love the job, And when you're asking those questions and you're not getting the right answers, it's okay to go outside your department. And that's something I learned later that I wish I would have known at a younger age. We have a mentor program, but it's not what I envision as a mentor program, Again, going back to your episode with Jacob Johnson, man, and his mentor, his stuff I'm mentoring, I feel spot on. Unfortunately, we don't have that. I was just speaking with my captain the other day. We got a brand new kid on, man. He's 20 years old, and you see him in the firehouse, and you can tell like he wants to smile, like he wants to be there, like he's a kid in a candy store.
Right on.
But he's afraid because he doesn't know anybody yet, And I had told the captain, I said, you know what, every chance that he gets that, he's working on my shift, I'm going to move him over to my station if he isn't assigned, because I want to show this kid the ropes. I want him to, get the best experience that he can, so he can be the best firefighter that he can be. So yeah, that's it, man. Seek out that mentorship, and if you can't find it within your department, it's okay to ask, outside of your department and ask for help.
Dude, that's a beautiful answer. 100% max points on question 2, because it's okay to love the job is such a powerful message early on, man.
Yep.
It's okay to be into it. Because I don't know what it is about cultures, and see, you got me preaching, but I don't know what it is about cultures that say, like, don't have that, I don't understand why they squash it,
Yeah.
in the young, in the youth, in the culture. It's infuriating.
It's funny about culture, and going back to Chief Thompson's book, his chapter on culture.
Chapter 2 is the greatest chapter ever written in the fire service.
Seriously, I'm sitting there reading this, and the multiple shifts, and each shift has its different culture.
Yes.
And in my eyes, I of course I feel I have the best culture, and
Absolutely.
The other two will debate it, and that's fine. That's something that we can debate, over a couple of pops, But it's amazing how 3 different shifts and 3 different cultures, man.
Yeah, the culture, subculture, microculture.
Correct.
Yeah, 100%, man. It's awesome. Okay, what is, and this is great because I get to pick on a training. What is your favorite training drill?
Man, I was thinking about this one because I honestly have so many. I truly do. And this is a rabbit hole that I could, diarrhea the mouth, for the rest of the night. But when it comes down to it, as much as I love engine work and I love pulling lines and flowing water, I'm also a big RIT guy.
Okay.
So I personally like the Pittsburgh Drill. I think it's a really good drill. I like getting, the group together. And typically, you have a group, 3 or 4 that volunteer to go first. And I allow everybody else to watch because I love to hear them strategize and how they're going to do it.
Now, I want to interrupt and say, kind of just give a quick overview. What do you mean when you say Pittsburgh Drill? For anybody who doesn't know.
So you basically have 3 obstacles before you get to your down firefighter. Just, you can do it in the bay, training tower, parking lot, whatever it might be. So your first obstacle is a wall breach. And you can either, have them just go through the studs as is. You can put a piece of drywall on there. You can add in, a wire like you would have in a residential structure. You can do reduced profile, so they have to take their pack off and everything. So once your team members get through there, typically we use following a hose line.
Right.
Your middle obstacle is what we call an up and over. So we take 3 pallets and just kind of make a triangle. Usually put a piece of plywood on both sides so it's kind of easy up, easy down.
Sure.
Up and over that. And then your third obstacle would be the tunnel. And again, it's our tube. One of those same things. You can keep it open. You can fill it with wire, whatever you might, want to do. And then at the end of that tunnel, off 5, 10, 15, 20 feet, you have your down firefighter. So you find your down firefighter, do what you have to do. And I know that people teach different things, shutting off the pass, notifying command of what you have, creating that harness. If you do that, mask change out, regulator change out, hot fill, whatever it might be, and then extricate your down firefighter back through those same obstacles.
The obstacles. Okay.
So I really like that one. It's an eye opener, I think, for a lot of people, because when you're standing there watching it, it doesn't seem that hard.
Right.
And then you get into it, and it takes one guy to, get caught up on something. If you're not working as a team, once you get that down firefighter, through the tubes can be tough. That up and over, man, by that time you're working. You know what I mean? You're breathing hard.
No, it's beautiful.
Back at that wall breach, and you not only have to get your team members through, but you have to get this down firefighter through. So it's a kind of a ball buster, man. And
No doubt.
I really opens up your eyes to a real rich scenario, before you go into your training tower and create that, that scenario sometimes that you never feel like you're going to win. But that's probably one of my favorites. My second favorite, though, honestly, is the tailboard talks. Just sitting around some
nice
table, you know what I mean? And just, throwing an idea out there. Or, hey, I saw this or I read this. Some of the best trainings, I think, just come from, again, just simple conversation.
Dude, I think you had it with the Pittsburgh Drill, and then your explanation of it really had me for max points. But then you threw in tailboard and completely killed it. So 100% crushed. Number 4, what mistake have you learned? And we talked about this, I think, earlier, but you can elaborate again if you have anything to add. Mm-hmm. What mistake have you learned the most from in your fire service career?
Learn the why. You know what I mean? Learn the why. And I learned it kind of late that, you're going to fail sometimes. You truly are going to fail, unfortunately. You want that failure, though, you want during training. You don't want to fail, obviously, on the fire ground. And sometimes it does happen, unfortunately. It is what it is. I'm human. I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. I've heard a lot of your guests say, how many times, they screw up. And again, it's going back to owning your mistakes. But I think for the most part is, accepting failure is not only part of the fire service, but part of life, and if you can minimize those mistakes on the training ground, so you're almost proficient, 100% and everything goes right on the fire ground. But I think that was my biggest mistake is accepting failure. It's going to happen from time to time, unfortunately, and owning those mistakes is so big.
Dude, it's key to growth, man. And that kind of the reason that the crux of the whole scrap of is your experience there. So that's max points, because the answer right there was not good enough for max points. But I'm like, but that's the whole reason we talked about earlier. So it kind of weakens your answer now. So I have to say max points because we talked about it for like 30 minutes earlier. All right. Final question. Heavy fire, searchable space. Would you rather be assigned to the nozzle or first in on VES?
Man, I think this is kind of easy for me. I'll be on the nozzle, man. I tell all the other guys, get your face on the, in the paper and stuff like that while you're pulling out that victim on the VES. me and Chris and I will be in there creating that survivable space and, throwing some water so you guys can get, the glory boys can get their picture in the paper.
Fair enough. Fair enough. There it is. Throw in the water. All right. Pulling up. Officially 129 scraps in the books. The next 5 questions for firefighters. There's your answer according to Steve Stawecki, which I think you scored very well, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you, sir.
If someone wants to get a hold of you or more info on how they can go about doing that, what do you got?
Just Facebook or Instagram is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me.
Beautiful. A couple plugs. You have some conferences going on. Or
I do.
Conferences that you're passionate about.
Yep, I got a couple things coming up here. Our state's we have a pretty cool program. Back in 2011, the former governor signed into law the sale of commercial fireworks. So the fees from those fireworks essentially go to firefighter training. And I might not have everything, 100%, but kind of bear with me. So basically, the state fire marshal's office gets roughly about $2 million a year for free firefighter training throughout the state of Michigan.
Beautiful.
It is. It's really awesome. So right off the bat, each county has a training committee, and that committee is chaired by one person. So a CTC chair is what we call it. So each county gets the equal amount. Last few years, it's been like $17,500. Don't quote me on it, but it's right in that ballpark. But after every county gets that money, there's also a balance. So that balance goes to counties that have the highest number of residents, highest number of firefighters, and stuff like that.
They try to spread it around. Right.
Correct. So essentially, Wayne County, where Detroit is, they usually get the most, roughly about $300,000 a year. Oakland County, again, which is Metro Detroit, get about $200,000, and we're in like third. So we get up in Macomb County here, we get about $100,000 a year. So my frustration, though, specifically with my county, and I have not made friends with my opinions, sitting in some of these meetings is, we fund a lot of classes that are needed. Don't get me wrong. Fire officer classes, instructor 1 classes. There's a small push, medium push to get everybody through blue card, but some of these classes are, middle level officer, high level officer type classes, and over the last 4 to 5 years, we've been funding Target Solutions with this free money. So every firefighter within our county gets access to Target Solutions. Now, as a training officer, records management, fantastic. Excuse me, that drill day, that you have, but now, again, like yesterday it was 45 and sunny, today it's snowing. Okay, you know what? Work on your EMS license, or you know what? Here's bloodborne pathogens, or
sure.
Training, something that we have to hit every year. It's a crappy day. We'll make it up later. I get it, but that Target Solutions takes up half of our budget. So we don't have a lot of fun classes at the end of the day, the sexy classes.
Right.
This year in October, we actually funded a RIT class. We, as a RIT committee for the county, we adopted the FDTN curriculum. So we got 1 class, but that's been like 4 years in a row that we haven't done anything. So I might have screamed loud enough, and maybe somebody listened to me, or maybe the training got just kind of aligned. Back a couple months ago, I get a call from Miss Kimberly Piskowski, who runs the MI prevention for the state fire marshal. And she says, hey, we have this balance of money from the fireworks funds, and we're going to put on a 3-part training series. One's going to be in March. It actually just happened last weekend. They're calling this the JC5. The Joint Council Training Council has 5 different entities that are all part. So that's where the name came from. So they had one in Lansing this past weekend. Next month in April, Aaron Heller, On Scene Training Associates, he's going to headline the hands-on class in Lapeer. And then they asked me to do my engine class, Chris and I, to do our engine class in Gaylord.
Nice.
So we're pretty excited about it. I just learned a couple weeks ago too. It's not just our class. There's a handful of classes. Like specifically with us, Mark Van Oppen's going to be there that weekend.
Nice.
I know. I'm pretty excited about that. I met Mark a couple times.
One of my favorite people. So
seriously, he's the nicest guy in the world, man.
Absolutely.
He's fantastic. I love his program. Brian, I might butcher the last name, Kazmerzik from the ISFSI will be there for another class. So there's like 5 or 6 different classes. So we're really excited about the opportunity, to get up there and spread the word on nozzle work. And we have a great instructor cadre. Got a couple of guys from Lansing, and we got a couple of guys from Traverse City, Michigan. We're all going to come together and, flow some water, stretch some lines, and it's going to be awesome.
Beautiful.
So in the midst of that, I get a call from your friend Sean Duffy.
Duffy. I love Duffy. I saw him yesterday. I saw him yesterday morning, in fact.
He's awesome, man. So, he's back in Michigan now working for Why Not Fire. And
Right.
He calls me one day and he goes, hey, there's nothing going on in Michigan. I'm like, I've been telling you that for, the long time. And he goes, well, I was talking to this guy named Todd Edwards. You know who he is? I'm like, I've heard of his name once or twice. And hey, we got this idea to have this, this hands-on training and, lecture series, here in Southeast Michigan. Are you interested in being a part of it? And I'm like, are you kidding me? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So please don't get me wrong. I am like, I'll be the water boy or maybe.
Sure. Dude, 100%. I understand what you're saying, but yeah.
I'm all excited. But yeah, it's going to be a great opportunity. That's going to be in June. The hands-on class is actually going to be at my department, at my
nice.
Yeah, so we'll have one day a lecture. Kyle's going to speak. Todd's going to speak. Sean's going to speak, and Robertson's going to speak.
Dude, it's crushing it. That's awesome.
It's going to be awesome. They're in cadres for the hands-on for the following 2 days. So super, super excited. And then following that weekend, man, we're going to go back up to Traverse City. Hopefully, our friend James is going to have a drain the bay, big bays up there. We're going to flow some more water. So we got a lot of stuff coming up, and super excited about some good hands-on training coming up this summer.
Badass stuff in Michigan, man. So there you go. So get in contact with Steve if you need some of it.
Absolutely.
I love it, dude. 129. Dude, I'm very excited. Firehousevigilance.com. This is the part where I do my commercials, which is go to firehousevigilance.com. If you love the scrap, please go support it because I do not want to sell ads. And I probably will never sell ads. I'll probably just quit doing the scrap. But I want to do something for people who do support the scrap. I'm going to do like a private. I'll never put the scrap behind a paywall ever, period. I will never do that. But I will do something bonus on top of it that only the subscribers get to go to, which is like me talking to people off book, if that makes sense. I don't know. I'm working on it in my head. It makes sense. You can also get shirts, hats, everything's in stock, coins, books. Coming up on the scrap this Saturday, like a few days from now, Mike Galliano, Mikey G, coming on the scrap. It's his second time to be on. The first time he came on with Ann, and they talked about firefighter marriage, and so that was what we focused on was firefighter marriage. But I've been wanting to bring him back and talk about the art of go, no go, and This House Rocks, and the 7 Deadly Sins, and all of that, because I love Mike Galliano. He's one of my favorite people. He's, going to be on this Saturday. Looking forward to that conversation. And then, check it out. So, Steve Stawecki kicking off March, followed by Mike Galliano, and then Rob Fisher, and then Chief David Rhodes. So that's March. So it's like, how good is that, man? That's like awesome, man. March is going to be epic. If you see me out and about at conferences, next week I'll be in Bears of the Oath, and I'll be in Catoosa. If you see me, please say, hey, let's get a picture, because I'm terrible at it. But I really love doing it, and I love putting the videos together. So say, hey, can we get a Mutts Don't Scrap picture? I'll be like, hell yeah, we can. Let's do it. Go support the show. Remember, Steve, thank you for being an awesome guest, dude. Great topics of conversation.
Hey, thank you very much for having me, man. I really appreciate it. Again, awesome conversation, and I'm glad I had the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Dude, me too, brother. Me too. Remember, Mutts Don't Scrap. I hope the tone stays silent unless it's burning. Stay safe out there.